Hey guys, welcome to my channel. This is a book review for Who I Am by Pete Townshend of The Who. Famous rock band, been around since the beginning, since before rock and roll was around. They were originally a rhythm and blues band. Some of the earlier bands were, even like a scuffle band. They're when they were in their high school bands. But this is going to be a book review, so I'll talk about the actual writing of the book, and I will dig into the actual contents of the book. So I got this book off eBay. I got a pretty good deal on it. Not the best copy that I received. This is not a criticism of the book by any means. Unfortunately, my copy has scribble on the first 90 pages or so, but once I get past that, it is there's just a black line on every page. I'm not sure what was going on with this eBay seller, but it was ridiculously cheap, so I dealt with it. Now let's just say, so this is an autobiography written by Pete Townshend himself, and he's the guitarist and creative mind behind The Who, and his own his solo work. And he's even written some songs for Roger Daltrey in his solo work as well. If you guys don't know, welcome to my channel. I am Chris Norwood. I'm on a journey to hear every song ever recorded. I know that's not possible, but that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm sort of dedicating my channel to covering my experiences in listening to, listening to all the music there is and reading about music, and just kind of sharing as I kind of go on this journey of becoming a music expert, if you will, if I can say that. So I love to read too, so this was just perfect. I just finished reading Flea's autobiography, Acid for the Children, and that was really great. I've got a review of it too. So yeah, this has been my latest page turner, and it is really great. The Who are my I think they're like my 50th favorite band, I believe, somewhere in there. I like 56 out of 155 studio tracks, putting them at about 36.12%. If you want to get into real nerdy stuff here, they're without a doubt my favorite 60s rock band. I've got Empty Glass on vinyl by Pete Townshend, and after reading this book, I'm definitely interested in hearing the rest of his work. He's absolutely done an insane amount of music. Not a lot of music with The Who. They've only got a handful of albums, but he's done a lot of solo material. He's written a lot of films and musicals and books and art installations. And this book was so well made that it makes me want to go out and see what else he's done as far as art installations and movies. I did learn that the Iron Giant was sort of started in his brain. He did pass that project along to someone else for the end result. But yeah, he's recorded with so many people in the industry. Elton John, the Rolling Stones. He's worked with, he's played at least with Jimi Hendrix. So all that stuff, all that rock and roll history is in this book, and it's really fun to read about. I'm a guitarist too. I would say Pete Townshend's a big influence for me. I am without a doubt nowhere near that kind of level of playing, but yeah, he's a really great guitar player. I discovered The Who through being a Green Day fan, and Green Day was doing some really amazing covers with The Kids Are Alright and things like that. So it made me deep dive. Tommy was a big influence. A Quick One While He's Away was another Green Day cover. It was a huge influence on American Idiot and 21st Century Breakdown. So, Who I Am by Pete Townshend was written in 2012. I was initially worried that this was going to be an older book and it wasn't going to cover, I knew it wasn't going to cover 2019's Who, the self-titled album, but I wanted it to at least be new enough to contain details about Endless Wire, and it did. There wasn't a great bit of time spent on Endless Wire, but there was enough to sort of tell you how that album was made, where initially, with the two-piece lineup of The Who now, Roger Daltrey did want to become more of a writer, more of a creative member in the band, but unfortunately they just didn't have time for whatever reasons. So, maybe we'll get that on a future Who album. Maybe we'll get some more Roger Daltrey penned lyrics or even music. Maybe he'll even play the guitar. I know he was originally the guitar player of the early incarnations of the band. So yeah, we're going to jump into the slip kid of the book. Pretty cool cover there. There's Pete Townshend smashing his guitar on the back. We'll take this slip kid, slip kid, slip kid, slip kid. Yeah, there it is. You got this, you got that, and you got that. Smells pretty good for a used book. So let's read this. It was originally $32.50. Wow, I don't know. I maybe would have paid $20 for this to get a decent copy. But, I paid a couple bucks for this one. So, The Voice of a Generation, the most highly anticipated autobiography of the year, and the story of a man who is a Londoner and a mod, wanted the Who to be called the Hair, loved the Everly Brothers, I do too, but not that drawling dope Elvis. Wow. But he wrote a song dedicated to Elvis. What's up with that? Real Good Looking Boy. One of the best songs of all time. Check it out. Real Good Looking Boy tears up my heartstrings every time. He wanted to be a sculptor, which is really not in the book. A journalist, he did that. A dancer, he didn't do that. And a graphic designer. He has done some of that. He became a musician, a composer, a librettist, a fiction writer, literary editor, and sailor. I'm not sure what a librettist is, so I don't know if that was in the book. He smashed his first guitar on stage in 1964 by accident. When they say accident, it was sort of planned. He kind of wanted to do something like auto destruction on stage, but I guess the moment that it happened, it was sort of, he got really angry on stage, and I guess he figured that was the right moment to smash a guitar. I don't think I could ever bring myself to smash my guitars. I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. I've got another guitar up here. I've got two over there and one over here. Could not smash them. I saw The Who a couple of years ago, and there's no more guitar smashing. That's over with. He heard the voice of God on a vibrating bed in rural Illinois. Now, I don't remember this particular moment, but I did really enjoy his moments of spirituality in the book, and I believe him. There was moments where he saw angels, where he encountered, where he spoke to God, or he heard angels singing, and he had some really powerful moments in the book, and we'll get to that later in my video. If you guys like and subscribe and stick around till the end, that'd be great. I'm trying to become a famous YouTuber, and I'm just getting started. So, he's partially deaf in his left ear. That situation's kind of got a little better, a little worse. He stole his windmill guitar playing from Keith Richards. He followed Keith Moon off a hotel balcony into a pool and nearly died. He did too much cocaine and nearly died. Can I say that on YouTube? Drank too much and nearly died. Detached from his body in an airplane on something and almost died. Helped rescue Eric Clapton from something. Eric Clapton almost died. Is banned for life from Holiday Inns. Yeah, they did some really serious damage to hotels and motels and all sorts of places, venues. Was embroiled in a tabloid scandal that has dogged him ever since. That part was disturbing. There is really disturbing some controversies around him. He does dive into those things. He has some explaining to do. And he does. I feel like he gave pretty good reasons for most of the things that he did. And other times he does admit to being a jerk, a rock and roll, self-obsessed, self-absorbed, selfish man. Some of the worst things, in my opinion, were, like if you're married to a rock star, one could expect not to see them a lot or not to spend a lot of time with them. But when he was kind of ignoring his kids or choosing to spend time with groupies or doing drugs instead of seeing his kids, that part's a little bit hard to read, but he's honest about it. So, is the most literary and literate musician of the last 50 years. I would give him that. Planned to write his memoir when he was 21, but he published this book at 67. He's the legendary lead guitarist and principal songwriter for The Who, one of the most influential rock bands of all time. They're my 50th favorite, or somewhere abouts. He's responsible for having written over 100 songs and rock operas in the band's important catalog. He is one of Rolling Stone's 100 greatest guitarists of all time. He's definitely the best one I've ever seen in concert. It was mind-boggling, even to be in his 70s now. And was inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1990. That's pretty awesome. He resides in West London, where he was raised. So this is on Harper Books. And again, this is a used copy. I'll take that sleeve off so we can deep dive into this booklet. And there's some pictures in here we'll get to as well. So, like I said, I came off the heels of reading Acid for Children by Flea, and I was pumped to go back and read this autobiography by the Who mastermind, Pete Townshend. I'd saw this book. I'd seen it in Walmart. I'd seen it in the mall around the time it came out. And I thought, I should probably get that. But I never did. And then this year, quarantine going on, I wanted to get something in here to read. So it's a great journey through his entire life from birth until, his late 60s. And if you're concerned that there's more here than The Who, there is a lot of his childhood and a lot of his personal struggles with his marriage and his children and his house and his boats and his, all his helicopters. But The Who are definitely, it feels like a book written about The Who with just some, real minor things with his personal life. So don't let that detract you from the book. It's a very good read, a lot of fun. I stayed up way too late every night trying to finish this thing. For me, I was always waiting for the next Who record because that's what I wanted to read about. Wanted to read about the writing, the recording, the production, the songwriting. That stuff is really interesting, like how certain band members get paid more than others. How do they all sort of agree on things like that? And they really do explain it. And that's another thing that makes this book stand out, is on television, in movies, in books, in interviews. Famous people and rich people don't give numbers. And in this book, Pete Townshend actually does give numbers, like, they took me to the bank. They explained that it was my bank. I didn't even know it was my bank. And the people that worked there, they weren't fans of my band, but they knew who I was. And they gave me, X amount of dollars. It was crazy. It was crazy. He could not believe how much money he had come into. So that was interesting. Seeing, I've always wondered how rock stars get paid. Like, they're just like, when they're not on tour, they're just sitting at home. Like, does somebody, so this book really explains a lot of that stuff in detail. And at first I was a little bit irritated with, he does seem that he wasn't happy with the financial situation even after he was a multimillionaire. But he kind of explained it in a way that made sense. Like, if I am a multimillionaire, but the record company wants me to go on tour, that tour costs a lot of money. And, there was a question of like, oh, if they're only paying the four of us $1 million, but the tour is going to cost, X amount of millions, that's not really a good deal. So that, it really explains like the problems of rich people, that first world problems kind of thing, where it's like, yeah, maybe $1 million isn't enough to do the things that you're doing in your career that cost a lot of money. Guitars are expensive, and he was smashing them every night. So there's a lot of wasted money in here. Some of the financial problems of John Entwistle were kind of depressing. Some of the later Who tours while he was still alive was to keep him up. Like John and Roger Daltrey were kind of having financial situations where they needed to tour, and they kind of drug everybody along with them. So that stuff is really interesting, kind of heartbreaking and sad at the same time. Let's see. Yeah, the Who is definitely the biggest focus of the book. Pete's personal problems seem to be almost, except for the childhood abuse, most of his personal problems seem to stem from him being a jerk, like an egotistical monster that just was, trying to do his thing and just didn't care who got hurt along the way. So that's a little bit disturbing. He does acknowledge his guilt, and he does acknowledge that it was his fault that his marriage fell apart. So he does seem to have rectified some of these things as the decades have gone by. And I haven't really heard any controversies about him in the last 18 years or so. He's been a good boy, right? He's been a good little rock star in his 70s. So I've heard and read a lot about the Who. I probably got into the Who in 2003 or 4 heavily, and these being such a huge music nerd, this book does still have a lot of new information to me. There were some stories I expected to be in there but weren't, like the story behind Who Are You. It wasn't really addressed in the book, but I've heard it. The relationship between the bandmates was, aside from making the music, that was probably the second best part. Like from how they write songs to which personalities clashed. I loved every minute of that stuff. Roger Daltrey, at least according to Pete Townshend, is just always punching everybody's lights out. If you ask him to do something that he didn't want to do, he'd just punch you in the face. He'd knock you unconscious. He was confident, and he wanted things a certain way, and him and Pete sort of clashed on that a lot. John Entwistle he seemed like a quiet guy, at least according to Pete's perspective, but he would always go off with Keith Moon. So I don't know, it's like Keith Moon and John Entwistle were just this raging, like the terrible twosome, the toxic twins of Aerosmith. The rhythm section of this band were just, really, really strange individuals. His death in 2002 was covered here, and that his partner in rhythm section is Who is Keith Moon? Who is the moon? So the wildest, craziest, and most colorful rock star that ever lived. Dressing like a king, wearing a crown. He lived like a king. He got a heck of a lot out of a really short life. He seemed like he was always having fun. His passing was like one of the real first tragedies of the band, and they were definitely never the same after this. It is crazy to think how we got to where we are today with Roger Daltrey and Pete Townshend, and them still just plugging away at The Who music. I know they were planning on following up 2019's Who with yet another album, so maybe, hopefully we'll get multiple albums from this sort of smaller version of The Who. Be really great news for us, right? That'd be really awesome. Some of the other more interesting stuff was, I thought it was on here, but he invented, where did it say? He basically invented, I don't see it on here. I thought it was on here. Okay, he invented the Marshall Stack, Feedback, and the concept album. So yeah, Pete Townshend does not get mentioned enough today in that he virtually created modern guitar sounds. Now, Jimi Hendrix was doing some crazy things. The Rolling Stones were doing some interesting things as well. And there were some other guitar players that were earlier. But Pete Townshend virtually created modern rock and roll guitars. And some of his braggadocious things, like I know him and Jimi Hendrix kind of butted heads a little bit on tour. They had some words. But Pete Townshend does come across a little bit arrogant, and then he feels like the Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix, and the Beatles were kind of intimidated by what The Who was doing, or he feels like they were kind of stealing some of his ideas. And even the Beatles, he said they recorded Helter Skelter just trying to sound as tough as The Who. That could be true. I don't know if that's true. Maybe there was kind of a battle of the bands there. Johnny Rotten was initially considered to play the lead role in Quadrophenia. That would have been crazy good. That would have been, wow. What a world. Keith Moon, shortly before his early death, he was supposed to star. This really impressed me. It really impressed me. Keith Moon was always talking about all these movies he was going to be in, and I don't know how similar, but Pete Townshend says that Keith Moon was going to star in a James Bond parody movie, which was essentially Austin Powers. Years and years, decades before Austin Powers came out. So that was one of the coolest, most interesting facts in the book, and it's one that I definitely want to research a little bit and see what that was supposed to be. I do love, as I've mentioned earlier, I do love the spirituality of Pete Townshend. While I don't necessarily have the same religious beliefs as Pete Townshend. His religious life is a huge part of this book, and it's very interesting. He speaks of hearing voices, seeing angels, and it's really great to hear stuff like that from a rock star. Very spiritual guy, a lot of praying, a lot of interactions with the spiritual world, and in the moments where people pass away and are born, it does seem to be a significant spiritual thing for him. And I'm getting goosebumps right now. Oh man, I might even cry during this book review. I don't know, maybe that'll be my thing. I just cry during every YouTube video. The absolutely coolest thing for me, other than the Austin Powers thing, this is actually even better. The song, Who Are You? We didn't get the traditional why they wrote it like where he was passing out and the policemen and all that stuff. But Pete Townshend was here in the United States, and he was visiting his religious leader's estate, and he was in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is just north of here. And then he came to South Carolina and was wandering the beaches, Myrtle Beach, which is my sort of local beach. It's right over here. And this is really amazing for me to hear that the song "Who Are You" was written in part about his walking on the beaches right down the road here in America. That's so cool. That is awesome. Really awesome part of the book. I actually I kind of saved that spot in the book because it was so cool. Here it is. We'll actually jump into it here. Before the band was packed off to the USA, we performed at the Oval Cricket Ground with our friends in the Faces. Rod Stewart kicked footballs into the crowd, and the party atmosphere continued hours after the event, while Kit chased after the promoter who had run off with the money allocated for charity. Wow. I was drunk at the time. I drove through the exit gates with less than an inch to spare on either side of my big American camper bus. The U.S. tour, here it is, started in Charlotte, North Carolina. I took the opportunity to visit Maher Baba's American home in nearby Myrtle Beach. This is right here, guys, right here in my backyard almost. One of the verses of the song "Who Are You" refers to my experience walking through the forest there for the first time. Now, I want to just jump in my car and go right now and check out the forest near Myrtle Beach. It's like less than a couple hours away. It's just so exciting for me as a music nerd that Pete Townshend was just right over here, and he was writing, "Who are you? Who the heck are you? I really want to know. Who the heck are you? I know there's a place you walk where love falls from the trees. My heart is like a broken cup. I only feel right on my knees. I spill out like a sewer hole, yet still receive my kiss. How can I measure up to anyone now after such a love as this? Who are you?" I was overcome. I tried to sleep in one of the simple cabins in a secluded lake. The next morning, joining the band in Charlotte, I was shown around Maha Baba's modest house. Wow, that is just amazing, amazing. Myrtle Beach, man. Myrtle Beach influenced an English band from the UK. Really awesome. That really made my reading experience just pop. Really enjoyed this book a lot. I started out slow at first, and then I started taking it to work with me. I was leaving the house early just so I could sit in my car and read in the morning before work. I was reading it until all hours of the night, not sleeping, and then going to work. Yeah. So another thing which I mentioned earlier is I had no idea that Pete Townshend, his Iron Man writing project became the Iron Giant. So that makes me want to go see that and see what I can pick out of it that I recognize from The Who or Pete Townshend. Partying with Rolling Stones and Jimi Hendrix. There's an interesting detail where Pete Townshend actually had romantic feelings for Mick Jagger. There's a few moments pretty interesting about that. The making the movies, I really want to check out all these films that Pete Townshend was involved with, and Keith Moon, and all four of them were famous for their acting. I remember Roger Daltrey was in a show called Sliders when I was a kid, and that was really awesome. Mama Cass, her house where she died was in this book. So this book really has it all. If you're a Who fan or Pete Townshend fan, He's a focused writer. I really want to read more of his material. He recounts basically 67 years in really rich detail, and some of it you're kind of left wondering if maybe he's made it up. The controversial problems he had with the law, some of that doesn't quite make sense. I don't want to end on a bad note, but I don't know if I believe him on some of that stuff. He was doing research for something online to try to prove that the government was involved in that. And if you know the controversy, you know what I'm talking about. I don't really want to mention specifics here. I don't want to get in trouble with YouTube. But Pete Townshend got on the internet to try to prove that the government was involved with bad things on the internet. Then the police confiscated all of his equipment, and he admitted to doing it, but then they didn't find the evidence on the computer, which made him kind of look suspect. Why would you admit to something so bad if you didn't do it? But then there was no evidence. So it was very, very strange that he admitted to it if he didn't actually do it. So that was really strange, but he did have an explanation, but I don't know. Pretty strange situation there, but it was all cleared up at the end, and not sure what happened there. But yeah, the background, like Elton John, Sid Vicious, Johnny Rotten, Jimi Hendrix, this stuff is this is like the history of rock and roll here. Pete Townshend was really there at the beginning, and he really helped shape the rock and roll universe. So, can the Who really be this wild? They just may have been. They may have been the wildest rock group ever. They're pretty crazy. They smashed hotel rooms. They did the drugs, the drinking, the women. And Pete Townshend and Roger Daltrey are here to tell the stories. I know Roger Daltrey's autobiography just came out. Thank you, Mr. Kibblewhite. So I'm kind of interested. I almost picked it up to hear Roger's side of the story. I know there were some parts in this book where Pete Townshend said, maybe you need to hear this from Roger instead of me. And he even said he's encouraging his ex-wife to write a book. And he said, hey, her side will probably be different than mine. And I kind of thought about that as I was reading this book, is if he's making himself out to look this bad, I could only imagine what his ex-wife and other people would say. Again, I do feel like he sort of had a redemption, sort of a spiritual redemption towards the end of the book, and as things with the Who developed into more of it's essentially a Pete Townshend solo project, and Roger Daltrey just helps. So it's a really interesting read by about a really interesting person, really interesting rock band. So I'd kind of be interested to read something about the Who in general as well. But yeah, this is a really great book. I highly suggest it. Man, if I were going to give this a ranking, I would give it a 4.5 out of 5. It's not perfect, but it's almost there, almost perfect. Again, Pete has a really strong literary voice, and it seems to be honest in his storytelling. The book is very well written, very well read, and this is it's got a lot of really great rock and roll stories of just pure rock and roll excess, and I love the nerdy journalism side of Pete Townshend, or even the artsy things with the art installations and things like that. So yeah, I highly suggest it. Like I said, you can get kind of junky looking copies on eBay, or you can pay, $30 for a new one, or you can spend hundreds of dollars for an autographed one. I didn't want an autographed one, but there. So yeah, really great book. Really suggest it. It is. Let me see. I'll get you some more details. $32.50 on a Harper. Copyright 2012, Michael Oates, and we are coming in at how many pages? If you're not a big fan, it's a pretty long book. It's pretty substantial. It is 67 years of history. So the main part of the book is 503 pages, but then you get an appendix, which is a fan letter from 1967 that he opens in 2012. Then you get a coda, which is just sort of a nice little kind of a little goodbye from him. Then you get acknowledgments, and that goes on. There's a lot of acknowledgments, a lot of people in his life over 67 years. Then you get picture credits, which, I'm a nerd, so I read the pictures credits as well. Then you get a nice little index in the back if you want to find certain songs, certain albums, certain musicians that were mentioned, like George Adamski, Ted Astley. It goes on in alphabetical order. Syd Barrett, Cry If You Want, I Can't Explain, Jefferson Airplane, Leslie, I Put a Spell on You, Right Now, Pete Seeger, The Seeker, and finally, the last page is 538. So yeah, 538 pages of rock and roll insanity. 4.5 stars from me personally. Real quick. Just quick bonus round. This is the Who's Odds and Sods, which is a really great album. A B-sides collection. I've got it on vinyl. Pretty nice there. Okay, that's the Odds and Sods by the Who. Pretty freaking cool. Then this is one of my favorite vinyl records of all time. Pete Townshend's Empty Glass. There's a lot of information about this album. Pretty fantastic 1980 album with Rough Boys, I Am an Animal, and I Moved to Let My Love Open the Door. Let my love open the door. Let my love open the door to your heart. Jules and Jim, Keep on Working. Cats in the Cupboard, A Little Is Enough, which is talked about in a major way in the book. A Little Is Enough. I need to give it another listen. Empty Glass, Gonna Get Ya. All songs by Pete Townshend, produced by Chris Thomas, engineered by Bill Price in 1980 on Atco Records. What else do we got? What else do we got about Pete Townshend in the house? Woo! 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 I don't think I have them on any other compilations, but I do have Tommy, of course. Fantastic album. There is a great deal in the book about Tommy. That was a lot of fun to read. They are still just, still doing a lot involving Tommy. And my favorite Who album, A Quick One While He's Away. This one didn't get mentioned a whole lot in the book, but it is talked about somewhat. So, that's just a little glimpse into my other physical media with Pete Townshend. So check out the book. If you're a fan of The Who, you absolutely will enjoy it. It's got everything from Pete Townshend's birth up to him being 67 years old and remarrying and kind of, where he's at with his relationship with his children. And just all the main meat of it is just the recording process with the band, how the band functions with each other, and how they don't function with each other. And, you get that little bit of, you kind of do feel that he misses Keith and he misses John, but in a way, it was better for the band in the long run. If the four of them had continued, I think it just would have gotten really out of control, and I feel like they would have hurt each other a lot. So it seems like today, in 2020, it seems like Roger Daltrey and Pete Townshend they're not buddies. They're not best buds. They don't hang out. They don't drink together. But they do have a working relationship. They're co-workers, and they know when it's time to go to work. And, mostly today on the modern Who records, it's basically going through emails and or Pete Townshend creating the album and then Roger coming in and doing his parts. And it works. That doesn't sound like a great way to make records in 2020, but it's definitely better than a computer doing it all. And Pete Townshend's concept albums are just really interesting about computers taking over and things like that. Computers taking over, music being boiled down to something insignificant, and I really do connect with Pete Townshend in that being an artistic person is it can be difficult. We don't fit in with other people, and we don't really connect with other people except through our art. And I definitely understand that. I can be a little emotionally cold, and at times, and sometimes it's just a different way to live, being a creative person. Sometimes those creative projects, they take precedent over maybe your health or your well-being. And like right now, I should be eating dinner. I should have cooked something already, and I've been talking to you guys for, I don't know, however long we've been here. So art is important, and it gets us through rough times. Pete Townshend has gotten me through some rough times. And just to wrap things up, please like and subscribe, of course. But go and buy a cheap copy of this book. If you don't have a lot of money, like me, buy a $2 copy off eBay. If you want, if you got a lot of money, send me some, and buy the $1,000 autograph copies of this thing. They're out there. There's all kinds of them. Let's real quick, another bonus round for you guys. We didn't do this. There's a bunch of scrabble. There's pictures. Buddy, stop barking at people. Some really great pictures. I don't want to give away too much. There's a really great band pic. Some really great color and black and white photos. And I believe there's two sections like this. There's Pete Townshend looking kind of extra angry there with Keith Moon in 1967. There's that really special moment where I realized he wrote "Who Are You" in my town, essentially. So you got some family photos. Pretty cool. I hope Pete doesn't mind me doing this video. I'm giving him a very good ranking. 4.5 out of 5. Why couldn't I give it a 5 out of 5? If Pete Townshend sends me some money, he might get that half a star. There's them with an animal. I hope he doesn't sue me. He sued some people. Okay, so Nick Logan. There's him hugging Roger Daltrey. Beautiful, fun read. Highly recommend it. Please like and subscribe. I'm a music nerd. I know that title's taken on YouTube. I'm thinking music man, music historian, something like that. But anyway, check this book out. Love it a lot. Behind Blue Eyes, baby. Behind Blue Eyes. No one knows what it's like to be the bad man, to be the sad man. Behind Blue Eyes. Bye-bye.